Yeah, no. You know, they just saw it. How much? You said on the phone with the contract, you said it would only be $100,000. That's not a $275,000 intro. If you do this to me, I will literally eat your face. Love you. Bye. Oh, hello, and welcome to Office Hours, the live component of the live component of the facility, where good old Professor Kyle opens up his blast doors, as you just saw, and allows all of you, my nerdy professors, members of the facility, and the public who sees a warning sign in some concrete edifice somewhere and decides to walk in, against their better judgment, allowing you to ask any old nerdy questions, comments you have for your own personal science boy. That's me. If you want to join the facility, you can do so right now at patreon.com/Kyle Hill. If you want to continue on this conversation later, get more of me, get more of the channel, and coming straight from the facility is my security team who's in the chat. So if you are in the chat, be cool, or else I ban you, and then you get charged with sedition. Oh, that's depressing. Also, if you really want me to see a message, you can also use Super Chat on YouTube to simp for science, as we like to say around here. Don't we? Hey, look, I might not be pink-haired and bunny-mouthed and named after a musical instrument, but when I receive simps from you, it goes towards our mission here at the facility of educating and entertaining. Of course, we'll be going through a number of different topics this week, a couple of short ones, but some very interesting ones, stuff that makes me go, hey, oh, wow. Throughout the week, we'll be talking about Magneto reception. Well, I mean, come on, look at that photo. How can you not like it? We'll also be talking about what we really know about what works in terms of reducing the spread of COVID-19, and we'll be talking about the density of comets and asteroids, something that really surprised me this week, thanks to the original super nerd Matterbeam. And finally, we will be taking one of your comments, questions, corrections from the latest episode of the facility, which was where I almost got hypothermia and died on camera. But as you can see, super chats are already rolling in. South Cherry with the 40, who says, I'm usually cooking. Oh, and I lost you. I'm usually cooking this time of day, so I haven't been able to catch a live stream. Super excited. Well, I'm super excited to have you here. I hope your curry is scrumptious. Mr. Diglett, as always with the 20, says, I have completed my 33 revolution around the sun today. Happy birthday to you, Mr. Diglett, and to your family. A proud supporter of the facility, and a happy birthday to you. Lord Lacal with the 10 says, have you checked out any of the new anime that just started recently yet? No. Aria has. Aria really likes Fire Force right now, even though it is ridiculous. Mixmaster with the 15 says, hey, Kyle Senpai. Konnichiwa. Did you know that in the OG Gundam show, the mechas were powered by nuclear reactors? How viable would it be, do you think? Well, let's pause the super chats for the second so we can get on to our next topic. But something like nuclear power, and they also say this is the power source of Jaegers in Pacific Rim. This is much more plausible as an energy source because it can be a smaller energy source, and they're working on microreactors now that can output megawatts and megawatts of power. Right now, coal power plants have to be very big, so anything where you're getting a lot of energy from something that's miniaturizable is a lot more plausible, especially when it's a lot of energy there. So with that, let's get on to our very first topic. Slade coming in right as the pigeon comes in with the 10 says, hey Kyle, love the show. I just want to tell you that I love everything you're doing here, and you are the reason I'm getting into more advanced science. That's why I do what I do, Slade. And now I'm going to do what you simped me to do and explain to you why this pigeon has a Magneto helmet. So for a long time, scientists and biologists have known or inferred and then studied that a number of species, from birds to dogs to a number of different species, seem to be able to sense the magnetic field of the Earth. Now, the magnetic field strength of the Earth is very, very, very weak. It's like 500 times less strong than a refrigerator magnet. So given that your refrigerator magnet can't hold up your kids' lovely drawings that you tell them are nice, but come on, given that it can barely hold that up, the Earth's magnetic field is 500 times weaker than that. So we're talking about something very weak. And why I mention that is because its magnetoreception has always been surprising, that something so faint could rise above the background noise of the environment and be detectable by organisms. That is to say, if there's, even a permanent magnet just like sitting on your desk or something like that, it would interfere with it. Or similarly, if you were the predator in the jungle, because the jungle's already like 90 degrees, it'd be very hard to locate people with thermal energy alone, which makes it a really bad tactic. Come on, I'm getting off track. So magnetoreception then has to be a very specifically evolved property, if it exists, to detect this very faint signal against the noise that is the electromagnetic soup that we are constantly bathed in. So for many years, scientists have been looking into what makes magnetoreception work, and chemists have identified a number of different reactions and proteins that are sensitive to specific magnetic fields. They call these proteins Cryptochromes, which sounds like a cyberpunk word, but it doesn't have as many bugs, and it's playable. And biologists and chemists have realized that these proteins are magnetically sensitive in like a test tube environment. And up until this point in time, like just a few days ago, we'd never seen a in vivo or a living response by these proteins to a magnetic field. That is to say, it would be much stronger evidence that magnetoreception works through these cryptochromes if you could apply a magnetic field to these cryptochromes in a living cell and see some difference. Well, enter today's topic. Another line of evidence that was indicating that cryptochromes might have something to do with that magnetic sense is that when biologists went into the genes of different animals like cockroaches and fruit flies, and they interfered with their cryptochromes, they inactivated them, they lost their ability to sense the magnetic environment. So that's, again, good evidence that they're doing something, but we haven't actually seen it. So before I show you the results of this study, there's one more bit of advanced science just for you, Slade. Which is, how are these cryptochromes responding to magnetic fields? There must be something magnetically influenceable about them. Well, now we're talking about something called radical pairs. Now, all you really need to know about radical pairs is that they're two simultaneously generated molecules that share an entangled electron. So electron, of course, gives a negative charge to a molecule. And electrons, with their spin-up and spin-down properties, can be entangled, as I'm sure you may have heard of in quantum mechanics, where if you mess with one spin, you can immediately mess with one spin, the spin of the entangled particle, no matter how far away it is. That's spooky action at a distance. So these radical pairs are these similar molecules that have an entangled pair of electrons. And if electrons have a spin, electron's spin creates magnetic moment around atoms and molecules. It's electrons and their spin and how they move. Having those all aligned in something like a permanent magnet, like neodymium, having all those spins perfectly aligned makes the magnetic field as strong as it is. So all that is to say that these cryptochromes have radical pairs that can be because they have this entangled spin, they can be influenced by magnetic fields. Okay? So, man, good thing I'm not looking at my monitor, or else I'd probably look silly to myself. So what we're looking at now, another line of evidence, is that in the retina of birds, for example, inside of those cells, you find cryptochromes attached to the cell membrane. So now, we have cryptochromes in the eye. And we've gone through all this logical reasoning so far. So that means that the cryptochromes probably respond to light. And then in response to light, sense some magnetic field or can be influenced by a magnetic field? Well, watch this. These are completely unaltered human cells. They have cryptochromes in them. This is a line of commonly used human cells, the HeLa cells, the Henrietta Lacks cervical cancer cells that have been used in science for decades and decades. So what you're seeing here at the start of the GIF, and it's GIF, don't be silly. At the start of the GIF, what you're seeing is scientists blasting this cell with blue light. And these cryptochromes autofluoresce. That is, when you hit them with blue light, they will fluoresce. Now, if you notice, it starts out really bright, and then it gets much dimmer. And what the scientists are doing here is hitting this cell with blue light, and then they're running a magnet over it. They're running about a refrigerator magnet strength field over it. So what you are seeing in real time, well, not real time, it's sped up, but what you're seeing is in an unaltered human cell, cryptochromes diminishing their activity or changing their chemical interactivity, the chemistry going on in the cell in response to the magnetic field. There is a depression in the fluorescence of about 3.5%. This is the first time it's ever been shown that a magnetic field can directly affect the chemistry going on inside of a sensitive cell like this. So with all these lines of evidence, it's very hard to prove things in biology and in evolution specifically, but with all these lines of evidence, it seems to indicate that being able to see and sense magnetic fields comes down to having sensitive proteins that interact in a quantum mechanical way with magnetic fields to alter the chemistry inside of the body of an organism to give them a sense of magnetism. And if that's not gosh darn Magneto, I don't know what is. Raphael's Bistelbud with the 50 says, great content, love your show, greetings from Germany. Well, hello to you too. I believe that's how you say that. Angie with the 10 says, I wish I could send more. Thank you for what you do, Angie. All of your simping is noticed, appreciated, and more than enough. Trust me. People, the fact that people even give me any of their funding to help us on our mission is wonderful, especially during these very, let's say, trying times. Corey says, Kyle helps me with his enthusiasm, and then I scrolled past your comment. Hey, thanks, Corey. Christopher Rees says, hey, Kyle, greetings from England. Aye. If I tell my students about the basilisk and one of them goes on to create it, does that get me off the hook for its wrath? P.S. That was a terrible accent. No, it wasn't. Look, I'll tell you this. If you get even just one of your students to make the basilisk, I'm pretty sure that means you're off the hook, mate. I've seen The Boys. Can you tell? A lot of numbers and stuff says, hey, Kyle, great work. Love the content. Oh, hello. Junior News says, delay the second dose of the vaccine. Big deal, little deal. There's no evidence that I've seen or that I've heard of to indicate that getting the vaccine, a second dose of this vaccine quickly, has any adverse health effects. This is a common, not what you're saying specifically, but this is a common fear among anti-vaxxer types where there's this meme that you can't give kids a lot of vaccines quickly. And when you look at the data, that's not the case. You can give them a lot. And if you think of what nature is doing already, it throws microorganisms and pathogens at growing immune systems constantly throughout your entire life. Doing that with a couple of vaccines has been proven to be safe and effective. Sahil P says, are you in a junkyard, Kyle? No, I'm in my megafauna menagerie, and right above my head, you can't really see it, I have a giant generator. And Lola is back there. She's my kaiju. Thomas Haydrick As usual with the 10, says science was always my favorite subject. What's the most sciencey science you've ever personally scienced? Ever engineer anything non-villainy? No. One of my favorite moments I had doing a sciencey thing was when I was working on Because Science, and I had so it was an episode about how heavy Legolas has to be to walk on the top of snow. And while I was filming the episode, I had a realization that I totally messed something up, and I got some numbers totally wrong, and it gave me a weird result. So so on the fly, and I was super stressed out, I recalculated based on my own assumptions. What I thought was going on, and then I just happened to frantically Google and find a paper on this exact problem, looking at different paw pressures for like wolves and moose through the snow and humans. And what I found in that study exactly matched the pressure I had assumed for a human footstep on snow. And I felt so smart that through my own reasoning and mathematics, I was able to come to an answer that was experimentally validated outside of my own mind, and I felt super, super smart. And that feels good when you feel smart. Grim Reaper of Trolls with the 19 says, I think I've seen sharks being repelled by really big magnets. Do we know if they have those cryptochromes? I don't know if they have it in the same way. I'm not sure. I would have to check. But what I do know that they have are it's called ampullae de Lorenzini, and they're these gel-filled holes. They're like they're like blackheads, but the kind that you want, and it's all along their snout and their face, and it's sensitive to changes in electrical fields, and that's how they can sense fish moving about and maybe even their heartbeat. But conversely, when you move a large permanent magnet through something that's conductive, like salt water, it creates an electric field. So I would guess that what's happening is that they're getting some kind of shock from a moving magnetic field, generating an electric current in their face, which would probably feel bad. This actually happens with people as well. Let's pause the super chats for a second so we can get on to the next topic after this. But this also happens with people. I've read studies where they're working on experimental MRIs, nuclear magnetic resonance imagers. And those MRIs are using like many Tesla worth of magnetic field strength. So if a refrigerator magnet is like 500 millitesla, I think, then we're talking about something, that is hundreds and hundreds of times stronger than that. But these experimental MRIs, they're so strong that when the doctors walked the patient towards the machine, they had to walk slowly, very slowly, because what did we say? A changing magnetic field interacting with something conductive generates an electrical field. Guess what's a conductive material? Your blood. So in this giant magnetic field, if you move too quickly within it, an electric current gets generated in your blood, and reportedly these people could go weak in the knees, they could faint, they could taste a metallic taste in their mouth. That's crazy, but also crazy cool. And do you know what else is crazy cool? Whatever this next topic is. I forgot. Oh, okay, so it's less cool as it is. Anyway, so we're entering month, whatever it is, of COVID, and we're to the point now where we can start to understand what really works, and in terms of trying to tamp down this pandemic. And we've gone through this a number of times on the show. Does social distancing work? Do masks work? Yes. But in terms of all of the preventative measures we are taking, what works the best? So I'm looking at data just from the United States in a study called a very small title study, estimating the effect of social distancing interventions on COVID-19 in the United States. And these results were very surprising because it seems to me, at least in the United States, that by piling on, so to speak, piling on social distancing interventions, people in the United States, at least, seem to be getting very angry and anxious, which is understandable. Not the anger part. The anxiousness is understandable and kind of squirrely. And so it seems like when more and more is piled on, they start to disobey certain things or not. And because of the effect on the economy, especially initiating full lockdown seems like, oh, that's way too much. We can't do that. Well, okay, well, let's actually look at what works. You may have a feeling that wearing a mask and social distancing and not going to sports games, that's enough. But is it enough? Well, let's look at the data. This data from a pre-pub here. Intervention effects on the time-varying reproduction number in the United States. So the reproduction number is the R0 value you may have heard of in these discussions. That's the reproduction rate of the virus. So if one person infected goes on to meet another person, how many people are they likely to infect as they go on about their being infectedness? An R0 of 1 means that on average, one other person will become infected. And if it's just one person per person, that's not a explosion of infected people. If R0 is greater than 1, like 5, that means one person is likely to go on to infect 5, and those 5, and those 5. So things can get out of control rapidly. If it's less than 1, then it's unlikely for one person to infect just another person. And less than 1 is what you want for an infectious disease. That means that disease is on its way towards dying out. Mean relative reduction, what you're seeing in this first column, means how are you reducing the R0 number by percent. Okay? So if we look at self-isolating if ill, how does that work? It only reduces the R0 by 1%. Not going to sports games, football games, basketball games, your kid's volleyball thing that you didn't want to go to anyway, 2%. Social distancing encouraged. Hey, don't hang out, 3%. Not going to public events, 10%. Point out something else that's very important here is that second column that says 95% confidence interval. That means they have a good sense that these results have an effect greater than 0. But the confidence interval has to be greater than 0. And if you notice, public events, social sport, self-isolating, that all has a confidence interval of 0. Which means, according to the data from February 29th to April, when this thing was starting to pick up in the United States, these had no effect on reducing the rate of spread. What did was schools or universities closing and lockdown. So what this says to me is that the only real way of getting a handle on this pandemic in the United States is to find the real super spreading hubs. And that, when millions of kids are going to school in packed areas, packed classrooms, that is just a recipe for more infection. Those kids go on to go back to their parents. Those parents might go on to see other parents and their kids, and you can see how big of a problem that could be. But as much as it pains us economically, mentally, emotionally, lockdown is by far the most effective thing we can be doing now. Now, I'm not out here to tell you how to live your life, except you should wear a mask and don't go outside. But calls for lockdown are data supported. And reading from the study here, quote, overall, school closures and lockdown are the only interventions modeled that have an estimated effect that is not close to 0. No state had an estimated R naught below 1 before lockdown, but 29 states got below 1 after lockdown. These results suggest that the reversal of lockdown without the implementation of additional effective interventions will enable continued sustained transmission of COVID in the United States. What this study is saying is that if your state is giving in to public pressure to release lockdown for no data-driven reason, it's a mistake. And I don't know where you live, but I just want to recalibrate your thought process a little bit on this, because it may feel like staying home and not going to sports games and staying home if you feel sick is enough, but it's really not. At least according to this data, it's saying that it has effect that's basically 0. We got to lock it down. Cyrus says proper lockdowns, not half-hearted efforts, I imagine. Well, yes. Caleb R says screw lockdowns. Well, do you know what, Caleb? The virus doesn't really care what you think about it. It just spreads and makes more of itself. And then, you know, people die alone in hospitals holding the hand of a nurse they've never met. And they don't get a funeral. Happened in my family. Not so easy just to say screw it. Maple Build says, hey Kyle, love the Kyle. Oh, Michael Smith says, science Jesus, educating the simple. No, I don't, just because you're simping, I don't think any of you are simple people. Everyone has a rich inner life. Except if you feel convinced you need to, you know, storm the Capitol. But most people have a rich inner life, and all of you do too, and that's why you're here. And I appreciate that. Parker Brilliant with the 19, who says, hey Kyle, love the everyone. Hey, that's nice. What do we know about the new coronavirus strain that is more contagious? Specifically, why is it easier to spread? Thanks for being a great science advocate and being an excellent person. You don't know me personally. But anyway. It's not surprising that we have a new strain of COVID. For infectious diseases, every time it spreads to a new person, every time it replicates itself once in a single cell, we're talking about just a single replication, not millions of cases, just one case. Every time the virus is replicating itself, it's using your cell to make its own genetic material. And every time genetic material is copied, there are inevitably some mistakes, some mutations. And when you are mutating, think of how many viruses are out there right now. Trillions upon trillions upon billions upon millions upon trillions. Every single one of those mutations is an opportunity for there to arise something that is evolutionarily more advantageous, more contagious, more deadly. And so it's really not surprising that for as long as this has been going on, almost a year, that a new successful strain has appeared that is more contagious. There is nothing about evolution that prevents that from happening. In fact, we've gotten kind of lucky that it wasn't more contagious at the beginning, because look how terribly we're handling this now. So there's nothing super, super special about this. It is more contagious, but it's not unexpected. The more we allow the virus to spread, the more it has opportunity to mutate, evolve, and make new strains. That's why there's, you know, many different strains of the flu. That's why there's a new strain of flu each year that epidemiologists and biologists have to create a new vaccine for. That's why we can't just have an 100% effective flu vaccine. We need to guess each year what the thing is going to mutate into, and then we try to get it mostly right. That's the best we can do. We are in an arms race with evolution. We, with maybe the most complicated thing in the universe inside of our skulls, are fighting a arms race with a semi-living, nanoscopic thing, and we're losing. Kind of humbles you a little bit. Athena with the 10 says, awesome show. You've helped my 10-year-old get interested in science. Yes! Do you think Project Orion / nuclear propulsion is viable to get ships into space? Project Orion wanted to throw nuclear bombs out the back of it and then blow them up and then ride the shockwave, like burr, 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 like a giant nuclear hammer frickin' punching your spaceship into space. That's a bad idea if you have an atmosphere, and like fallout can get in it. And what if the ship failed? There's been, a few shuttles that have failed on launch. You have a spaceship carrying a couple hundred nukes, and if that fails, that's a no good. So what's much more viable is getting a nuclear fission or fusion engine, something small and really efficient. And once it becomes small and efficient, you don't need to have literally 95% of the spaceship be fuel. And then you can launch more stuff into space, and then we can do more stuff. Evil Pac-Man 15 says, is Zealandia really the 8th continent, or was that fake news? P.S. You're a cool dude. I don't even have to look that up. I don't know if there's anything to what you're saying. Zealandia? Never heard of it. Is there an 8th continent? No? I don't think so. Let's pause the super chats for a second so we get on to our 3rd topic. But Alicia, $50. Hey Kyle, I remember you in the Brain Scoop Insect Om Nom episode. Do you think... Thank you for watching that. I think it was Smarter Every Day. No. It's okay to be smart, by the way. Do you think insect protein could become a popular meat substitute? We have Impossible Burgers, why not crickets? They taste okay if you can get over the mental hurdle from experience. I absolutely agree. I don't think people are ever going to eat cricket burgers, but what I think is much more palatable and plausible for widespread acceptance is something like cricket flour. So flour made with majority cricket protein. And what makes cricket protein, the advantage there over something like beef or chicken, is that the amount of water, is talking about from like a sustainability standpoint, the amount of water you need, just as one metric, you need to raise to get the amount of water you need to get 1 kilogram of protein from crickets is like an order of magnitude, if not 2 orders of magnitude, less than the water you'd have to spend on raising a cow. And so in terms of raw protein and getting nutrition out to the world, crickets and insect protein is vastly more efficient. So it is a real way forward. And if you've ever tried like cricket chips, fried grasshoppers in a taco, it's not that bad. I think you should try it. And do you know what I'm going to try? Go into our 3rd topic. Unless I already did it. I forget what it was. Okay, so this is a quick one. So this is Comet 67P, which has some absolutely phenomenal photos taken of it. And what I wanted to just quickly point out is a discrepancy between how we imagine these rocky bodies to be and how they actually are. And this was pointed out to me by original... Oh, wow. Kevin, did you splash the invisibility polymer on this too? Ugh. But I want to point out a discrepancy between how we imagine these rocky bodies to be, solid, and how they actually are. So when the Philae lander, you might remember this from the Rosetta mission, when the Philae lander goes and landed on this asteroid, or its comet, it found something really interesting. The core of this thing is not a rock. Some comets and asteroids, they are formed from the ejecta of large impacts with other planetary bodies, so there might be a piece of planet core in there or something like that. But for this comet, and for many comets, it's not solid at all. In fact, as Matterbeam told me, I could swim through it. Weird, right? So, as we go on a little tour of the surface here, let me read you some data from studies of the surface from the Philae lander. This study also provides the first in situ in place measurement of the softness of the icy dust interior of a boulder on a comet. The simple action of Philae stamping into the side of the crevice allowed us to work out that this ancient, billions of years old ice-dust mixture is extraordinarily soft. It's fluffier than the froth on a cappuccino, or the foam found in a bubble bath, or on top of the waves on the seashore. Oh, it's super loud? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't know that it had... Here, let me play that again. Okay, I turned the music off. Sorry about that. Sorry, everybody. I'm sorry. I forgot about that. So, the interior of this comet, you could plunge your hand into it without resistance, like it were bubble. Sorry, like it were bubble bath bubbles. And like I said, I think we assume. I couldn't hear the music. I can't. I'm not wearing headphones, so I'm. This is all news to me. Sorry. So we have this idea that these comets and these asteroids, they could just impact something and they'd be super, super hard and solid. But because they are just like gravitational accretions of little dust particles and little rocks and boulders, there's not a whole lot of mass to them compared to something like a planet. They're very loosely gravitationally held together. And so we have an idea like this, but it's really, as some of you were saying in the chat, Carol Crosskop, it's like a fluffy rock. And if you don't want to touch a fluffy rock, I don't know what's wrong with you. But this is a nice little fact to tell your friends. Do you know that you could swim through a comet? Titan says, how does it hold their regular shape together if it's so fragile? Opposite of what you think. In that, the only reason it can hold its weird shape is because it's so small. Any object large enough, once objects get large enough, the force of gravity on them is enough to overcome the material resistance, friction, the interior forces in materials themselves, and they tend to spherify themselves because gravity pulls inward equally from all directions to the center of mass and center of gravity. So you can only have weird shapes like the comet or like a pyramid or a cube when it's not large enough to be considered a planet. Once it has that amount of mass, gravity will be so strong that it can make rocks act like liquid, and it'll just not into perfect spheres. Like the planet Earth is definitely not a perfect sphere, but when you get even more mass in a planet, when you get to a star, for example, the sun is literally about as perfect of a sphere as you can possibly get. Like almost mathematically perfect, because there's so much mass pulling in from all directions that, you know, it's much smoother than the smoothest thing you've ever seen. And I know something about smoothness. I've seen Joe Rogan's head. We have Bruhaha with the 10. Hey, Kyle. Just recently discovered your channel. Love all that you do and how you make science exciting. Just wanted to toss some support your way. Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for simping. We got some fun stuff coming up. Yep. Just trying to remember what the heck I'm doing with my life. Chip Tech with the 5 says, so comets are just space styrofoam. Yeah, what was it? Now that you say that, so styrofoam has a lot of air pockets, and I believe the air fraction inside of Comet 67P was like 75%. So it's the vast majority of it is just vacuum, empty space. So you could One Punch Man that comet. Easy. That's what I'm saying. Easy. Animate or Kids says, hey Kyle, love the show. I'm a wannabe science communicator, but I have no degree in science, just film production. Any advice? Well, there's a spectrum of things you can do with science communication and still be valuable or educational or entertaining. I would lean heavily into your video, your film production background to, and this would be if I were you, I would find something that I'm really passionate about in terms of science and make it your thing, but while you might not be an expert, I'm not an expert in anything, you do have a background in film production, so make it better looking and better flowing, better edited than anything else. Because being stylistic and being really good with how you communicate science is just as important as the science. You all would not be listening to me if I sounded like I was just giving a lecture and I was bored. Obviously, I'm not bored. I'm excited and I'm passionate and I want to share it with you. And I think because I'm not an expert, that helps, you know. Where conversely, you would listen to an expert if they were super boring because they're the super expert. But since I'm not an expert, I have to be really exciting, you know. So I would lean into your film production background and make the best damn looking videos or whatever you can possibly make and give them a sciencey angle to them. One example that comes to mind, you know, is Captain Disillusion. He doesn't have the most sciencey videos on the internet. They're not like physics lectures, but they're heavily science influenced. But what they are is inarguably the best edited science videos you've ever seen. Just go watch a single one of his episodes. It's great. There's so many edits per like 5 seconds. It's crazy. He's really, really good. But that's kind of what I'm getting at. Embrace your strength and then shore up your weakness when nobody's looking. Tyler with the 25 says, "Hey Kyle, new facility member here. Welcome. Did you get your silky white lab coat? If not, you should. Blood flies everywhere around here. As a data scientist for a hospital," so it's kind of... "It is incredibly frustrating to see some people refuse data-driven answers. What is your most oddly satisfying part of your job?" This is going to sound dumb. But honestly, well, the most gratifying is to have people like you say that anything that I did had value or worth in your life. That makes hard work worth it. But on a personal basis, again, this is going to sound silly. I do a lot of online research. And I love, after I've typed out a script, I love closing all those tabs. Oh, it must be what heroin's like. Caleb R. with the 10, who said, screw lockdowns earlier. Let me rephrase that. I'm sorry to those who lost loved ones, but to lock everyone down for too much longer will ruin people financially. We need balance. That's all I'm saying. Look, I agree with balance as well, but in the United States, we failed that balance. We could lock everyone down, get a gigantic stimulus, and keep people afloat. Do you know people in Canada were getting like $600 checks every week since lockdown, or something close to that? Be a little bit easier to get by with something like that, right? So lockdown is backed by the science. The financial sector in our economy needs to be shored up by the people we put in power in our financial institutions and what we decide to do with our wealth. That's not a failure of the science. You can don't be mad at your elected representatives that they're not supporting us more. Here at the facility, it's fine if I don't get a $600 check once a month or at all. But for most Americans, they are $500 away from being in debt. So obviously something greater has to be done. It's not a failure of the implementation of it's a failure of the implementation of the policies surrounding lockdown, not lockdown itself. Master of All with the Australian $10 says, "Hey Kyle, what do you like most about science?" What I like most about science is that as long as you use the same methods, the same reasoning, the same experimental setup, it doesn't matter who you are, what your sex or gender is, who your parents are, how wealthy you are, when you were born, how you were born. I think I already said where. In what time period, in what century. None of that matters. You will still find out the same thing about the universe. Science is a great equalizer. If we can agree on a way of reasoning and looking at the world, we can all come to the same conclusions. It makes information and discovery, it democratizes it. It opens it up for everyone, no matter who you are, you can realize the same things that Einstein did. And unlike so many other things, it doesn't depend at all on who you are. Yes, those economically advantageous and, in different social groups tend to go into science more than others, and good schools and blah, 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 blah. But in theory, that's how science works. In practice, it doesn't always work that way. Let's go on to our final topic. I know there's a lot of soupies, but we'll try to get to it. Peer review. So, as I'm wont to do, I take a comment from the last episode of the facility, which was, do iron boots work? And I strapped some steel to my legs, and I went in a pool, and I didn't almost die. I did almost get hypothermia, though. That pool was about 60 degrees, and I did it for you. And N10 Jiang does this for me. I'm going to highlight your comment. You're going to become an honorary member of the facility. Kevin's going to get you a plaque. And then we're all going to celebrate you. N10 Jiang says, I feel this question naturally follows, though, if you're talking about iron boots. Is their amount of weight enough that allows you to move relatively freely underwater and gives you traction to walk? So the problem that I had, even though I was easily held underneath the water with just like 24 pounds or so, I was unable to get any friction on my feet. And because the pool was sloping downwards, it wasn't flat, I had a very good feeling that if I went down the slope, I wouldn't be able to get back up. And I didn't want to drown on camera. So is there a feasible way? Is there any way to make this practical? Well, I'm no diving expert. Do you know who is? A new member of the facility, Uncle Brenner, who left this in our Discord, and I just had to highlight it because of how much expertise this really shows. But I'll let my good Uncle Brenner say, number 2. So, as I thought I mentioned in the video, but I should have, obviously divers deal with this problem all the time. They strap weights to themselves to control buoyancy. And Uncle Brenner says, we teach buoyancy control hard. We want people to stay off the bottom. Besides, there's no such thing as running underwater. There's also critters that live down there. I will distribute my weight between my ankles, hips, shoulder blades, keeping the lead below my shoulders. Since what we wear also adds to our buoyancy, like neoprene, a large dry suit, or a link outfit if you're being weird. When in my dry suit, I have an excess of 30 pounds of lead, and I'm only about 150 pounds. I also add, as more of a trick for dealing with students, add more. And if they need more when we're out in open water, I also have tons of bricks that I use to get my buoyancy pinned, and I'll wow my students by going inverted, standing on my head, perfectly standing still, and move them to myself on, and I can't, my body's blocking it, but they do a fun demo of buoyancy control. What I'm getting at is that if an experienced diver who teaches buoyancy control and puts 30 pounds of lead on their body still says, don't go on the bottom and there's no such thing as running underwater, I'm going to say that answers your question. I don't think there's any practical way of doing this. And I think if you did have enough weight, if anything, it would probably be very dangerous. So, oh crap. So, N10 Jiang, you are now an honorary member of the facility. Fantastic. Fantastic. Now, Kevin there, my boy, we'll get you a plaque right after. What do you mean? They just got here? They have my face on them, right? Oh, they're going to be so good. Just a sec. I'll be back right after this commercial break. Have you ever looked at your favorite science communicator and thought, hey, wow, I'd love to take a bite out of their face? Well, now you can, with Kyle Hill moon pies. No, they're not made out of lunar regolith. They're just normal cookies with a smart boy's face on them. And when you bite into them, it's a nice, creamy center, just like he has. When you bite into a Kyle Hill moon pie, it's almost like punching right through an asteroid or a comet. Just a flaky, bubbly center for your enjoyment. And if you need them chilled, just leave them out in space for a little while, as you see here. That's only 3 Kelvin. Kyle Hill Moon Pies. Now available for $3.99 installments of $3.99. That's so much money. What's 400 times 400? 160,000? Woo! That's a lot for a cookie. German Festus says, ha ha ha, so I can eat Kyle's? Nice. Yeah, people don't know that the fan art that they make on the Discord, sometimes I feature it, and I plan out exactly what I'm going to say beforehand, and then I nail it. Adam Duke says, what the bloody hell is this? Well, what does it look like? I'm selling product. Mika Jen with the 10 says, my 9-year-old, Matthias, one of those must be correct, fell in love with science thanks to your old superhero videos and Dr. Stone. He watches every video. Thanks for helping the next generation of scientists find their calling. Mika Jen, thank you so much for saying that. Much love to you and your family, and to Matthias. Matthias? Matthias. Hi, Matthias. Hey, Matthias. Hey, Matthias. One of those should work. Now I feel bad. But thank you. The Reichenek, member of the facility with the 20, says, finally caught a live stream, been busy with school and work. Here, have some coffee on me from one of our Earth-based coffee shops. Keep up doing what you're doing. Well, dark matter coffee is pretty good, but it goes right through you. You know how good that is, right, Kevin? Because it literally would go right through you. Because it's dark matter, and because it's coffee, it makes it go... Forza Jersey with the 10 says, lockdown created an underground speakeasy culture. You can't pay people to behave. I hope we eliminate cold and flu season and dangerous viruses with proactive vaccines in the future that work for polio. Yeah, it has created some really crappy situations where people still go to parties, but I disagree. I think you could absolutely pay people to behave. If you're giving people like $2,000 a week, $1,000 a week to go through lockdown, I bet substantially more people would stay home. Pizza for Breakfast with the 10 says, if you want to try cricket tacos, look for Osaka restaurants. I know I'm saying that wrong. I visited that place once, but I know I'm saying that wrong. Yeah, there's also, there are these cricket crisps, cricket potato chips available at your local grocery store, probably, which are quite good. They're not as good, but nothing is. System with the Canadian $1, and that's it. I appreciate that. Nate Dill says, finally caught your show after mandatory chapel at the shelter I am stuck in at the moment in Allegheny, Maryland, which is one of the highest per capita COVID cases. Most attendees don't wheat masks. I'm going to say you probably meant wear masks, but if they're wearing a wheat mask, don't let them eat it. They're gluten intolerant. Fractured Raptor says polio still exists in labs, including modified variants, because humans. Well, you study stuff, and then you make the vaccine, then you still have the stuff. There's a lot of scary labs that have, for science reasons, a lot of scary stuff in it. The biohazard level 4 labs are negatively pressurized, in fact, because there's such scary stuff, viruses and pathogens in them, that if containment was broken, because the pressure is negative, air rushes in to the facility and not out to prevent spread. How cool is that? I always love that. Oh, we got a big boy. We got Innocuous Remark with the $100 donation who says, hey buddy, I'm a master arborist, just wondering your opinion on trees, pro or con. I happen to be pro trees, and I spent an entire summer as an arborist. I have been rock climbing and working at a rock climbing gym, and given that arborists use a lot of the same gear in terms of harnesses, gree-grees, ropes, and that kind of thing, I did arborists for a summer, and I loved it. chainsaws are cool, and I got to operate the wood chipper. So thank you for your $100. That's way too much, but I appreciate your profession, and you can put me down as a firm yes on trees. I'm pro trees. Don't let anyone tell you different. We have the 5 from Harper U. It says, hey, God darn it. Hey, love, Kyle the show. What are the centers of meteors likely made out of? Also, what's the difference between meteors and asteroids, etc.? Well, the centers of meteors, like we said, you can have like a lot of bodies flying about the solar system are the result of great impacts from other planetary bodies. So they could be made out of, more solid metal, rocky planet cores, or it could just be an accretion of gas and dust that, like we said, is very foamy and soapy. Not in that way, but like in a density way. So it depends on the meteor, and it depends on the asteroid. Now, what is really embarrassing is that I forget the difference. I think an asteroid is in space and a meteor enters the atmosphere. If I'm correct, please put it in the chat, and then I'll be the smartest man of all time. Christopher Marr with the 20 says, hey, I saw a thumbnail of the first video and I watched, seemed wacky, and I loved it. Kind of reminds me of a much better version of Bill Nye. Fun stuff, and I enjoy learning. Remember, kids, eat recycled food. I don't know what that means, but I love your Majora's Mask avatar. For comparing me to Bill Nye, that is far too generous, but I appreciate it. And the last, I just want to know what's a meteor, what's an asteroid. I am correct. I'm correct, right? Brandon Withers, oh, and thank you for that 20, of course. First time, Brandon Withers says, first time I've been able to catch one of your lives. Love your channel, been following you since a couple years now. Back to when you with the Nerdists. Love your sciencey goodness, LOL. Thank you so much. Yep, we did a lot of great work over in Because Science, and now we're here. I finally escaped the quantum mechanically induced computer hellhole that I was in, and now I run this place. I have a hot, sentient computer girlfriend, and I sometimes slice whole watermelons in half. It's a fun place to be. A lot of clones die, though. That's one. It's a tax write-off, but a lot of paperwork. Corey says, when are you going to get to sciencing with Trace Dominguez? Trace is actually a friend of mine. Check out his YouTube channel, Uno Dos Trace. Very sweet guy, very smart, great host. And like a lot of collaborations, I will do more of them once data-driven lockdowns are not a thing anymore. I'm gonna visit the Hacksmith soon. I'm gonna visit Adam Savage soon. I want to do all these things, but I want to be safe about it, and I would not be so bold as to endanger people on planes and these other creators and hosts that I know and love. That would be unethical in my mind. So I will wait to do those. That being said, I know you've seen me collaborate with people since lockdown happened, but these people have been within my germ pod, so to speak. We all just recently got tested and retested, so we're keeping track of what we're doing. I'm trying to be a good example. I would never want to, go just do a collaboration just to do it. I'd prefer to be safe. Plus, I don't feel like, wheezing to death. And as always, Music Central Piano comes in clutch at the end of the stream. $50 says, keep up the great work, Kyle. Stay safe and rational. I always do. My brother / sister / them. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Office Hours. Went through a number of fun things today. I hope you liked all the topics, and especially my new sea salt sprayed hair. If you want to... Did you guys know about that? It's awesome. If you guys want to continue on this conversation afterwards, you can go to patreon.com/Kyle Hill, as my security team is putting in the YouTube chat right now. If you missed everything that was happening live, it will be back up on the channel afterwards. This week's episode of The Facility, I am debunking a trope in science fiction and pop culture that you have seen everywhere forever, and it's always annoyed me, and we're going to get to it. Does it involve choking? Yes, it does. I'll see you next week. if the country doesn't explode. I will see you next week for another office hours. Until then, I feel like I'm forgetting something. I don't think I am. But until then, have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a fantastic weekend if I don't speak to you sooner in the facility's walls that are very thick. And be nice to each other. This is what I got.